Hey, good morning, everybody. What's happening? This is Robert Phoenix broadcasting to you live from Fredericksburg. I'm on the other channel today, which I have been able to access now. And the reason why I'm here is because I have not been allowed to stream live over on the 15 Minutes of Flame side. So I apologize for any confusion, but there is certainly a pretty significant glitch in the system. And I hope you guys are going to get notified here because, well, I'm here and not there. And there's a reason why I'm not there today, probably because of what happened yesterday. So let's check in with everybody. Looks like you're getting some notices here, which is really good. I'm happy about that. We got Steve and Jolie and 10 Dragon. They removed, yes, they did. They not only removed my video, but they seem to have limited my access to stream live on that channel, which is why I'm here. And I figured out how to switch the channels up a little bit. So, you know, score one for inventiveness, ingenuity in the time of crisis or challenge. And also take note that I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to stream via Zoom to the 15 Minutes of Flame channel moving forward. I don't know, because today was not allowing me to do that. And YouTube basically controls the stream, which is going to bring up a bigger question about what I'm going to do moving forward. And I'm going to have to explore a couple different options because of what happened yesterday and seemingly what's happened today vis-a-vis the live stream. So I basically have two options. Well, option number one is I go to DLive, and where a lot of other people have migrated to, and you know, you guys are welcome to follow me there. I'm going to have to explore DLive and try to figure out what that's about, what the difference is between DLive and YouTube, how I stream to DLive, because Zoom, it has been a great interface for me and YouTube. If I go DLive, I'm going to have to use a different platform or a different technology, probably OBS, which is, again, kind of a different operation, which I've used in the past, by the way. Not that I'm not familiar with it. It's not rocket science, but it's a different kind. You have to plan a show differently with OBS, which I've talked about before. So there's that. The other option is to go back to the 15 Minutes of Flame site and stream live off of that through Boxcast, which we did before. And I thought that was actually a pretty good experience. We had some people coming over to the chat there. A lot of people couldn't integrate the chat or didn't like the chat. They liked the chat over on YouTube better, which is why I kind of walked away. But now there's going to be a line in the sand here pretty soon. And I'm going to have to say it's either going to be here or here, because YouTube is increasingly stringent upon not just allowing what content they'll approve of, but even my ability to stream live through the 15 Minutes of Flame side of things. Because today the stream was not happening; it was just cut off, and I don't know how long it's going to be cut off for. I got a message from YouTube yesterday saying that my video had violated community standards. So I sent them a video. I'm sorry, I sent them an email back. And by the way, I am going to record today's show. So this is going to be kind of a thing moving forward, is recording the show. Once I start to get into the show, I'll start to record it. So I sent them an email back, and what I asked them is, please verify what community standard I violated. Because this is very much like what would happen in an Eastern Bloc country, right? You'd be accused of something, but you wouldn't really understand or know what you were accused of. The only thing you would know is that you were accused of something. And through the accusation, you would have your rights or your privileges limited. So I doubt if I'll hear back from them. But I pretty much know what the community standard that I violated was, and it was the Robert Wilner video. And in the Robert Wilner video, he talks about the hoax, the AIDS hoax, the HIV hoax, and how it was perpetrated by a group of people, one whose name begins with an A, right? First letter A, and the last name F, AF. You know who it is. Then the other guy begins with an R, first name, last name begins with a G. RG and AF, and Wilner talks about them. And Wilner talks about how he injected himself with the so-called HIV/AIDS virus, and nothing happened. Imagine that. You know, it killed him was a heart attack about a year after that that press conference / talk that he gave. So I'm pretty sure that this is what, you know, had the video was removed based on that. I'm pretty sure of that. And the reason why is because Susan Wojcicki, who is the head of content for YouTube, has made it very clear that they're only going to go by the WHO standards, or the NIH standards. They're not going to allow talk about vitamin C or hydroxychloroquine. I've got a very interesting hydroxychloroquine story for you today. They're not going to allow any, really they're going to do as much as they can to censor any kind of material regarding alternative health. And they clearly have made that statement. And the reason why is, again, it's about control, but it's also about economics, and how these people have vested interest in the various vaccination companies, or the companies that produce the vaccines. The major big pharma companies, they have stock in these companies, right? They have an investment, and they don't want their investment to have any competition whatsoever. So there's a monetary angle here as well. It's not just the fact that they want to control, you know, what you see or what you hear, what you put in your body. I mean, that's a big part of it, don't get me wrong, but there's also a payoff for them. And the payoff is significant. And as a kind of covert handshake or covert deal, they're here to support those companies as well, right? As those companies also pour advertising dollars into whatever platform that is supporting them. And we know that all the platforms are supporting them. It's just hands down. Facebook has become very aggressive against the anti-vax group and the anti-vax people. Twitter is very close second, and YouTube obviously has drawn a line in the sand. So those are the big three. And there are other areas, and again, I have to really explore what I'm going to do. And once Mercury goes direct, which is going to be in the middle part of July, I'm going to be making a move. So it's either going to be over to DLive, or it's going to be back on a revamped version of the 15 Minutes of Flame site with a highly integrated chat, and probably even some sort of a forum that you guys can go in and hang out in. Okay. That's going to probably be through Boxcast, and you know, you guys are subscribing to the channel, and whatever you subscribe to will go to the Boxcast fee. It's not insignificant. It's about $140 a month to stream off the site. But since we have the subscription plan in place, that's where your money's going to go, to keep that afloat and keep that moving. So it's going to be one or the other. But after Mercury retrograde, I'll do the Friday Farcast here. And the one thing about Boxcast is I can stream live in both sections, in both places, but there tends to be a bit of a breakdown with the signal and the transmission degrades. Also, people will nominally choose YouTube over coming to the site. So I'm going to have to make a choice. Now, on the Friday Farcast, I'll probably still go live on the Friday Farcast via YouTube. It seems to be one of those areas that YouTube deems, I guess, more acceptable or less controversial. And Sunday Night Astro Live, I could probably do the same thing because it's astrology. But 15 Minutes of Flame, it's going to have a new destination. That's where the more incendiary material comes up. So that's that. That is the prognostication. And today, very clear when I was not able to go on and stream onto my other channel. So here we are, the backup channel, figured out how to do it. Now, what's really interesting is that Twitter finally jumped in and decided that they were going to censor the president of the United States, who had a tweet that said that mail-in votes lead to corruption, voting corruption. And Twitter decided to do a PolitiFact check on that and deemed that that was actually false. And we know that it is not false, it is actually true. But they were going on two sources. One was CNN and the other was some other bogus source. Now, this got the president's panties, you know, and his, you know, up around his crotch, right? You know, his underwear, his tighty whitey's got very tight around his crotch, and he's now going to do some sort of executive order. And I don't know what the executive order is going to be, but you know, he's going to make sure that these pathways and these platforms, remember they're platforms, not publishers. These platforms are going to adhere to some form of quote unquote free speech. Well, I'm glad he's doing it in general, but Jesus, we've been hanging out here for a while having to deal with these massive tech companies who are essentially turning into banana republic Stasi states. But when it affects the president, now all of a sudden it's a big deal. But before, maybe not as much of a big deal, right? Not as much of a big deal. The one guy that, and no matter what you think of Alex Jones went to the mat for Trump. Alex Jones decided to go all in with Trump. And I'd never seen that with Alex Jones, with maybe the exception of Ron Paul. And he still has a relation with Ron Paul. And Alex was Alex is a, you know, sort of a Ron Paul Texas libertarian with ties to intelligence agencies, but that's a whole other story. But Alex Jones went all in for Donald Trump, all in. And then once Twitter and once YouTube and once the Sandy Hook families, specifically the Posner family, went after Alex Jones, he was left hanging. Like there was nobody on the other side of the ledger sheet, the other side of that line that was there to kind of help or bail out or support Alex Jones. He was radioactive at that point. And, you know, again, you know, whatever you think of Alex Jones, and he has a lot of flaws. But the one thing that he did do is he went all in, he committed for Trump, he went to the Republican convention, he stirred up a bunch of shit. You know, he was, you know, he had Jack Posobiec and Mike Cernovich and, you know, all these quote unquote conservatives on, and really kind of altered his programming. Why? Because he wanted to get Trump elected. And once Trump got elected and they decided to go after the big whale in terms of censorship, there wasn't a lot of protection and there wasn't a lot of support for Alex Jones. But now that it's coming home, now that it's getting very personal, the hue and cry of censorship is starting to finally be heard. And even Tucker Carlson made note of this last night during his broadcast, came to the same conclusion. So it'll be interesting to see what actually happens with this so-called executive order. Now, the only thing that they have to do, really the only thing they have to do, is they have to change status of the so-called internet provider, or not the internet provider, but these third parties like YouTube or Google or Facebook or Twitter. They have to change their status. If they change their status to being publishers, as publishers, they have to abide by the constitutional rights, right? They have to abide by the First Amendment. But because they are not publishers and they have been deemed platforms, they are, for all intents and purposes, able to skirt around the First Amendment issue. As a platform, they can decide who who says what or what is being said. That's the bottom line. They don't have to adhere to the so-called First Amendment of the constitutional rights. And it's simply a designation, platform publisher. All they have to do is change the designation. And Congress afforded them the right of having this status, this platform status. Now we know that the Congress is being run pretty much now by the so-called Democrats and the progressives. And as a result of that, I don't think they're going to change the status of Twitter or Facebook or YouTube anytime soon. They're just fine. They're just happy with them being platforms right now. But if we do indeed have an election in November, and it's looking really dicey, I'm thinking 50-50 at this point, for a number of reasons, one of which I'm going to get into today. Then if there is a sea change in the House, and there's a very serious possibility there could be a sea change in the House because of the egregious behavior of these governors in the various lockdown states. People are finally seeing their colors, and they're just saying, look, if it's like the map is clear. Lockdown versus open. The lockdown to the blue states, the open to the red states. It's really not that difficult. There and the red. I was talking with a client yesterday, and her son is going to now start playing summer baseball, and she lives in Kansas. Summer baseball, they're firing it up. I have another client who lives in upstate New York, and they sent out an email that said, if you venture into the playground, guess what's going to happen? You're going to get a summons. You're going to get a summons, and you'll be arrested. So we're living in two very different Americas right now. And it does seem to be mostly demarcated by the red and the blue. I hate to say it, but it's true. So if you're somebody who's in one of these blue states and you've seen the behavior of Governor Whitler or Mayor Beetlejuice, and you've seen these people and you've seen them put their cards on the table, if you're still staying there, which you may want to rethink, there's probably a very good chance you're sick and tired of these shenanigans, and you just may theoretically vote in the other direction if indeed your vote is counted, and if indeed your vote counts at all, period, end of story. Now, if there is a so-called Republican Congress, they could theoretically end the platform versus publisher debate. But as I've stated before, it doesn't matter who's in power, right? Whether it's the right or the left, both parties are probably more in favor of censorship than not. Because when you don't have censorship, what you have is free speech, and you're able to talk about the issues, and you're able to pinpoint things and direct things. You're able to shine a spotlight, and there is this kind of reverse process of transparency. And when you're in power, when people are in power, and I don't care what stripe you are, what color you are, most people in power don't want transparency. They do not want transparency. They want to be able to operate and do whatever they want without any kind of intervention or people being able to kind of eyeball what they're doing. All right, we got about 96 people here, not quite as much as being on the other channel because people are used to being on the other channel. And again, I apologize for having to switch channels, but this is where it's at now. Today, at least, okay? Let me do a quick check in Chatlandia. Let's see who we got. We'll do our little prayer, and then we'll jump into today's show. Let's see, what do we have here? Would a canceled election leave Trump in office by default? Yes. A platform that publishes articles, comments, and opinions. Exactly, Finette. We need to have an election. New York needs an overhaul. JMP Love is in house. Lori Dubin, state of North Carolina, cause trouble for the RNC heading into the convention, which is supposed to occur this August in Charlotte. I've heard that that Florida will have both parties' conventions. The parties are corrupt corporations. They have zero allegiance to the voter. I would agree with that, Christine. testing COVID-19, COVID Tavistock, Catholic vitamin C. I can see a really virulent pathogen being released and the conservatives being blamed for quarantining. There's James Provenzine. Morning, James. Rave on. Yep, we're going to do it. We're going to rave on. Frank Bry, what's going on, Frank? Okay, so let's do our invocation here. Dear blessed and holy Father, Mother God of the great central sun, which is the universal light, the light of Sananda, Yeshua Emmanuel, we open and give you this show today for only the highest and best information and truth to come through this channel and everybody else that is watching, listening, and participating. And in so doing, we also offer up any karmic residue that we share amongst us that is cleansed, purified, clarified, and cleared away so that we may return to our lives as sovereign and sacred beings. So be it. All right, let's get into it now. There's a lot to talk about. Now, where were we last week? What was I talking about last week? I was talking about the Purple Revolution. And I brought up the fact that Prince died April 21st during the days of Molech, which is also, I believe, the Queen's birthday. He died on April 21st. Donald Trump was elected on 11/9, right? 11/9 of the same year, 2016. And that was 202 days later, or the number 22, which is a fairly specific number in terms of numerology. It's called the Master Builder. It's kind of a big number, 22. So the day after Trump wins the election, or kind of more precisely the day of, Hillary Clinton comes out and she announces that she's accepting her defeat. And she is dressed in purple. Her husband, Bill Clinton, purple as well. This was a sign. This was a statement. This was a signifier that the Purple Revolution was about to begin. And we know that Prince was, quote unquote, the purple one, right? And his band was called The Revolution. So where have we seen this incendiary act take place? The incendiary act of George Floyd being essentially strangled to death by a police officer. It's Minneapolis. Where is Prince from? Minneapolis. Okay, so we are seeing now the Purple Revolution being ignited before our very eyes on the streets, not ideologically, not channeling this kind of sacrificial energy, which I do believe was set up on April 21st, 2016. But factually and on the streets, it is happening now. And these are not protests. We're witnessing riots. And look, there should be some outrage around George Floyd's death. It was a needless death. It was a needless and brutal death. But does it have to result in rioting? You know, what we're seeing taking place has nothing to do with justice. I'm going to play you sort of the big video that is making the rounds here. Let's see if I can find it. Well, look who's here. He was in this morning early. He was way in this morning early. So this is courtesy of Paul Joseph Watson. This is what was happening at a Target store in Minneapolis yesterday. Some of you have probably seen this, and you may want to familiarize yourself with this scene, because it is probably going to be more frequent than not over the course of the summer. Try it again. Looks like the Instapot is a popular item amongst the freedom fighters. I guess they have to have, they have to be fed and have quick meals on the go. There we go. This is retribution. This is retribution and so-called justice for George Floyd. And this is a scene that you're probably going to have to get used to over the course of the next few months. I've got other video where in LA, they're starting to smash and bash cop cars, and it looks like they're going to be calling the National Guard in to Minnesota. I found this over on Rumor Mill News, which is a pretty good website, by the way. It's a little out there. They're into the NESARA thing, which I'm really not into. But look at the name of this. Operation Purple Rain. National Guard to deploy to Minneapolis. Okay, so here we go. It's starting up. The National Guard has been requested, states Mayor Frey. There was also a report from National Guard contacts. They're calling the move into the Twin Cities Operation Purple Rain. What have I been talking about? I've been talking about the Purple Revolution, talking about the essentially ritual sacrifice of Prince, rock royalty, as this igniter, this catalyst. And here we have Operation Purple Rain. It's all coming into focus now, right? Operation Purple Rain to offset the quote unquote Purple Revolution. And yesterday, what did I talk about yesterday? I said part of the title of yesterday's show was the coming race riots. They're here. They are here now. And America has been turned into a tinderbox over the last 2 months with people who have been penned up, home arrest, forced to wear masks. I guess in the case of the Target scene, wearing a mask is probably an attribute if you're going to rip shit off. But they've already been working on all the profiling, all the biometric profiling of the AI. It doesn't really matter. They know who those people are. Mask or no mask, they know who they are. So America's been turned into a tinderbox. People aren't working. Even if they had quote unquote shit jobs, and a lot of jobs are shit jobs, it gave people something to do, it gave people a place to go to, right? Now, there are some people who are relieved that they don't have to go to their shit job. And on some level, I don't blame them, right? On some level, I really don't blame them. They're getting probably more money from the bailout than they were getting from their shit job. And they're probably having a better life experience as a result of that. That's going to end on July 31st, by the way. Unless, of course, they vote for another stimulus package, which they probably will. But America's been turned into a tinderbox. And the match is being lit now. So we've had a couple of incidents. We had the incident in Georgia where the young man was wrestling with the guy with the shotgun. Now that case is going to go to trial eventually, and I'll bet you that those guys get off, or they get off with a reduced sentence, because once they untangle what happened there, they're going to find out that it's not as cut and dry as a jogger jogging around the neighborhood and being hunted down like prey. That's not how that story goes down. Now, what happened to Minneapolis? Like, it's there for everybody to see, and it's not a pretty picture. It is just not a pretty picture. In fact, it's so unpretty that the guy who is being George Floyd, who is being choked out, you can see that something very significant is happening, because urine is basically escaping from his body. Okay, it's absolutely disgusting. It's disgusting what happened, and we have to ask ourselves: was this perpetrated? Was this part of some psychological operation to turn up the volume, to turn up the heat? Because we know that the corona, and I've been talking about this now for weeks, that that there was a new event, there were a new set of events coming, because the coronavirus has lost its steam on some level. It's got steam on another level, but it's lost its steam with this ability to lock people down and keep them in their homes, because people are over it. Now, there are a lot of useful dupes that are walking around with masks still. And in fact, masks are now being branded. Disney's making masks. The NFL's making masks. I mean, it's like ridiculous. I went to Goodwill the other day, which is open. They've opened up. And Goodwill says, please wear a mask in the store. And I'm like, fuck that. I'm not going to wear a mask. So I go in and I'm, walking around. I'm looking for some exercise equipment. And one of the workers, Goodwill people, walks up to me and says, "Hello, sir, would you like a mask?" I said, "No, I'm fine. Thanks anyway." And that was it. Just walked around the store, didn't see anything. So I left. So, the useful dupes are still out there, and they're still populating stores, and they're still wearing masks. And it's like, boy, I bet you they feel so good about themselves. Even when the data comes back, that they got all the projections wrong, all of them are wrong. They're saying now that the lockdown could have been worse for people in terms of, their so-called immunity than not. And if you want to look at an example, look at Belarus, which basically thumbed its nose to every other country in the world, including the WHO and including the NIH, or it's like Cat Central today, man. We're both up here today. But you can't be on the keyboard. You can't be on the keyboard. It's not going to happen. I'm going to have to enlarge the studio. We're both very much into being on the show at the same time. Rosie has figured out that Jasper's getting all kinds of third-party love. She's finally figured it out. So she wants in on the act. So Belarus, really very few deaths. Life went on as usual there. They didn't cancel a thing. They had a soccer league. Belarus is looking pretty smart at this point, right? And the rest of the world is looking like fucking idiots. I'm sorry. Idiots. In case you missed yesterday's show, I also talked about how in India, they found that there is a connection to a bacteria, chlamydia. And chlamydia, in conjunction with corona, and people experience a corona virus or corona event on a yearly basis. That's called the common cold, okay? But chlamydia mixed with whatever this new version of this thing is produces a pneumonia-like effect in the body. It's kind of groundbreaking and they found it mostly in Italy, right? I talked about this yesterday. It's covering a bit of yesterday's show. Just to give you another example as to how little we actually know about this thing that they used to essentially wipe out the West. That's what they did. They deployed this to wipe out the West. 3/11 was the demarcation day. Remember, 3/11 was also the day that Fukushima went off. So 3/11's got kind of an interesting numerological resonance. So the post 3/11 world is all about post-industrialization. Right? We have now been moved into a very, very different climate, a very different economic and technological climate. We have now been moved into the digital and virtual age. This is Alvin Toffler's third wave on steroids. And some of the stuff that they have planned is, and I plan on getting into this in the coming weeks. Some of the stuff they have planned will curl your short hairs even more. They straighten them out. Like they literally want to re-engineer the entire planet. Now, we've talked about this before. We've talked about how through the application of geoengineering, what they've done is that they have changed because of we know that there is smart dust, nano devices and nano arrays inside the geoengineering. All that stuff has been infiltrated into the biome. And so as a result of that, there's been a synthetic invasion into the organic world. And this is to completely re-engineer the planet so that the engineers of the planet become the creator gods of the planet. Sort of the new versions of Enki and Enlil. This is what they want. And everything, and I mean everything, will be re-engineered, including the definition of what it is to be a human. We've already seen that over the last 3 years, last 3 to 4 years, with the rise of the debate between the binary sexes, right? What is a man? What is a woman? I mean, it's all about re-engineering everything, from how we communicate, how we travel, what we grow, what we don't grow, what we eat, what we don't eat. We're in the midst of a massive paradigm change, massive. So this is really what the post 3/11 world is about. Now, in order to participate in the post 3/11 world, meaning if you want to be able to travel freely in the post 3/11 world, well, it's not going to be as easy as it was before. Travel is going to be much more limited, which we've talked about. And I'm going to give you a couple of examples here. So this is from the UN. Now, the UN is going to play a major role here moving forward. Major role. The UN is openly talking on their website about a new world order. And the UN is the new world order. It always has been. That's why it was created. So this is something that the UN is not only sponsoring, but at some point will make mandatory. This is the COVID Pass, the digital health passport, certified by the United Nations, uses your biometric markers to facilitate safe return to global society, okay? That's a really important phrase, to global society. This is not about society in general, but global society. So before you can re-enter the world, and when you re-enter the world, it will be a different world. It will not be the same world that you've been living in. We already know this, based on their model of this massive paradigm shift. COVID Pass is equipped with military-grade encryption, has more than 2.2 quintillion variations of codes. Think about that. Which securely corresponds to certified tests, all of which can do something different based on the details of the scanner, user ID, time and date, device type, and how many times they have scanned. Through unique biometric access, users are allowed to access their health and immunoresponse information COVID Pass, there's a trademark, safely facilitates safe return to work and life, and it is COVID Pass 666. Should we read this? Let's read it. I guess this is a Christian website, now the NBE. COVID Pass comes to us from the UK, so this is going to dovetail with our friends in the UK, with certification from the United Nations in support of the world governments, not as the solution, but the first of many digital health passports designed to control us, keep us locked down. Digital. Here's how it works. Step one, authorized healthcare professional creates a new digital health passport account by filling out the individual's unique data fields. If the user has pre-registered at home, the healthcare professional can simply scan the individual's predefined V code. They'll automatically onboard the user to the system. Step two, the professional can then proceed to authenticate and assign the designated COVID-19 test kit by scanning the V code attached or by typing in the unique serial number if the V code is not present. Step three, once in the system, the healthcare professional administers the test and on completion uploads the results. Step four, the healthcare professional will then set the trigger date for the individual being tested to come back for a follow-up test while the special measures are in place. This will set push notifications in the app from 1 week before the next test date. Step five, COVID passport is then assigned to the user's V code, which allows them authenticated access for return to work protocols. Wow. There we go. There it is. It's all laid out right there. COVID Pass 666. This is where the future is headed. Now, what's interesting here is that people are clamoring for a return to their normal life, to do the things that they used to do, i.e. go to work, have a business, things like that. There will be a demand at some point that people go through these protocols in order to return to their so-called normal life, which means that if you want to go see a live sporting event, that you're gonna have to have this or a variation of it to show the people that you are indeed healthy enough to attend that event. If you want to go to a movie theater, same thing's going to happen. In some workplaces, because they've managed to wipe out a lot of mom and pops and a lot of independent businesses. We all know that the corporate stores, the box lot stores, because they're all basically, run by these bloodthirsty globalists, they'll jump right on board. So if you work at Home Depot, or you work at Lowe's, or you work at Target, or you work at Costco, or you work at Walmart, any one of these box lot stores that have been allowed to stay open and have a shitload of people walking around their store. Meanwhile, smaller stores and smaller businesses have been shuttered, right? If you're one of those businesses and you work there, you're going to have to provide this kind of verification in order for you to walk back through that door and start making money again. Okay. This is how it's going to work. In which case, I would say you may want to rethink that. But look, I know that a lot of people are just going to, be lemming-like and just walk through that door, and they'll do whatever it takes. On some level, I don't blame them because they don't know anything different. And for them to be able to perceive something different would be just a radical departure from their consciousness. And most people haven't gone there and probably won't go there. It's too difficult. It's dangerous for them. It essentially removes them from their group or their herd or their family. And we've talked about this before. When you're removed from the group or the herd or the family, you are an open target. You're an open target. And that's why people gather together like that. Strength in numbers. There are other people around you, other animals around you. Maybe they'll get it, but you won't. I mean, that's how this thing kind of works at a primal level. So this is where it's going to go. I mean, it would be great if somebody said, hey, screw it, we're not going back. You can keep your passport. You can keep your work papers. We're not going back. I mean, that would ultimately be the best solution for everybody. It's like, screw you. We're not going back. If these are the conditions, you can keep the conditions. But unfortunately, I think that most people will do it, and they'll gladly do it. That's the other thing. And then we get into this whole, kind of psychology around shaming people that don't, because that'll be the next phase. We've already seen this, right? There was that woman, I think she was at either a Target or a Publix on Staten Island. If you haven't seen the video, it's a shocking video. One woman without a mask being cornered by about 7 or 8 people with masks. It's not a good look. This is the social engineering at play. This is how they've socially engineered people to turn on one another, because that person is a threat, right? That person is a threat to their safety. That person is the personification of a virus. They don't know that, right? They could say that that person could give them the coronavirus. So then they become the physical personification of the virus. But really what they are is a virus connected to freedom of expression, freedom of thought, freedom of movement. Well, I think one of the most important films of the 20th century was Easy Rider, for a number of different reasons. First of all, it was really the first independent film that broke away from the studios and started this new wave of cinema. Just from that perspective alone. It also captures a certain slice of Americana at a particular time in history. Like there's a very historical, almost documentary theme that runs through Easy Rider. The communes, sort of the hippie communes of the Southwest that sprang up, that show up in the movie, homesteaders, deeply, very, very much deeply ingrained kind of redneck culture in the South. Like it's all in there. It's all in there. And there are a couple things in Easy Rider that I think are two salient points. There's one salient point when Peter Fonda and Dennis Hopper and Jack Nicholson go to I think it's somewhere maybe New Mexico or Texas, and they go to a diner and they want to eat. And there's a group of young girls sitting at one of the booths, and they are totally into these wild, long-haired men, right, that are so different than their culture. They're untamed. This is why they respond to them in such a kind of fervent fashion. They're untamed. They're wild. Meanwhile, at another booth, there's the local sheriff and a couple other guys, and they respond to them very differently. And Jack Nicholson's character basically says, Dennis Hopper says, well, I think they hate us, or they're afraid of us, or something along those lines. And Jack Nicholson's character says, they don't hate you, and they're not afraid of you. They hate and are afraid of what you stand for. And what you stand for is freedom. And everybody talks about being free. It comes right down to it. People are terrified of being free. Like that's one of the most salient points of that movie. And I think as a film that really breaks new ground, that stands out. And the other point of that movie that I think is really brilliant and so prescient is when Peter Fonda says to Dennis Hopper at the end of the movie, he says, we really blew it, man. And a lot of people have debated what that line is about. And if you're not familiar with Easy Rider, the basic premise is that they Hopper and Fonda go to Mexico. They score a bunch of cocaine. They bring it back to the United States. They sell it to a dealer who's played by Phil Spector. They take their money and they're going to go ultimately to Florida. And they're on this kind of road trip. It's a road movie. And along the way, they stop in these various places, some of these places that I talked to you about. And then it's all capped off by this very kind of debauched night in New Orleans. And it's right after this event where Hopper says, I can't wait to get to Florida. I'm going to buy a boat. I'm going to take all this money that we made. And he's going to live his version of the American dream. And then Peter Fonda says, you know, man, we really blew it.
Battery low.
We really blew it. What did he mean by that? And I think that it didn't have anything to do with their journey. Easy Rider happens at the end of the 60s. It's happening in 1969. This is when the 60s are ending. And we have Altamont and Manson and Morrison and Joplin and Hendrix and Brian Jones, and the list goes on. And I think he was really talking about how his generation had an opportunity to do something really special. And he says, you know, man, we really blew it. So this is one of the reasons why I think Easy Rider is incredibly important. One, the soliloquy by Jack Nicholson in that diner in the South, and the other, the admonition by Peter Fonda that his generation, the boomers, had a chance to really do something, and they blew it. So if you have any boomer angst, go watch Easy Rider, because guess what? You get to see a couple of boomers get blown away at the end of the movie. I think it's a very important film. Very important film. And the reason I bring it up is because of that Jack Nicholson scene. Like, those are the people in that market with the masks on. Because that woman is not threatening them with a physical virus. That woman is threatening them with a metaphysical virus, a spiritual virus. And they don't like it. They don't like it. They want to stay in servitude. And the groupthink has taken over. And now we have another divide and conquer here in this country, and it's the mask versus the non-mask. Well, that stuff is kind of dropping. We got a whole new series of crises coming. And again, astrologically, I've laid this out. We've got Mars in Pisces now, which is rampant. Like, now we're talking about victimization and scapegoats. Like, people in Minneapolis using a tragic event to justify looting, stealing, theft, anarchy. It's a very Mars and Pisces kind of miasmic moment. And we're still in like first decan Mars and Pisces. It's going to start to hit the second decan, which is going to be the Cancerian decan. And that's when the troops are going to come in. Cancer is to protect, right? So get ready, buckle your seatbelts. You know, this next phase is on, and they've been planning. I talked about this about 3 weeks ago. You can see it coming. You see it coming. It's like the train was just coming right at us, right? So it's on its way. And again, I have advocated that
battery low.
That the place you don't want to be is the cities in America. And wait till Mars goes into Aries. We're going to Mars in Aries for 6 months, squaring off against all those Capricornian planets. Pluto, Saturn when it goes retrograde, Jupiter, it's all going to happen. It's going to be quite intense, very intense. And in July, when we have, was it late June when we have the solar eclipse, we have the lunar eclipse on June 5th. Which is connected to the United States. And of course, Mars is going to be in Aries, right? Squaring the eclipsed moon, squaring or beginning to square the US sun. We're talking about a very explosive and incendiary period. And people need to be aware of this. We are entering into uncharted territory now. You know, the whole situation with the coronavirus and COVID-19 is the tinderbox. And now the tinderbox is being lit. All right, let me check in with you guys. Let's see where you're at, what's going on in CL.
Power off.
Let's see. We're here. Let's see. Yeah, we're here. Oh, yeah, 151. Thanks for finding this show over here on this channel today, ladies and gents. I cannot see the live chat. Guess I'm behind. But I'm hoping you're there. 148 people watching now. Let me just do a quick screen refresh. Let's see what's happening with the screen refresh. And I'm not seeing any chat. Oh, there we go. There we go. Mars during the heat of the summer. That's right, Deanna. Yeah, during the heat of the summer, Mars and Aries. Let's see. What else we have here? It is Rob Scanlon. Hi, Rob. Bonnie Willow, Civil War. I mean, clearly that's what they want. They want a civil war. You know, the whole idea of a civil war is another language trick, right? It's a language trick. War is never civil. It's never civil. It's like a conflict between two gentlemen, two aristocrats. You know. I say, shall we meet out on the battlefield tomorrow? Say at around 8 a.m. after high tea. Why, yes, that sounds like a marvelous idea. Marvelous idea. Very good. Very good. We'll meet there. I mean, that's, that would be a civil war. War is never civil. It's very uncivil. And I even have my doubts about the first Civil War. I think the first Civil War probably did not happen and unfold the way that we've been told. And that's for a different show. That's where we get into the whole Tartarian timeline. And the Civil War is really about the absolute destruction of the South and the obliteration of Tartarian remnants. So will we have conflict in this country? More than likely. More than likely. And instead of the conflict really being between, people or groups or entities that create draconian and unjust laws, the conflict would be between people, classes, groups. This is how it's always set up. It's how it's always set up. And this is all part of the so-called Purple Revolution. And cooler heads should prevail, but man, what I've seen over the last 24 hours, they're burning cop cars in LA. They're having incidents in Charlotte, in Memphis. So this thing is starting to spread like wildfire. And of course, you have agents provocateurs in these cities who are there. They're trained. They're there to incite. They know exactly what they're doing. So a lot of this strife and a lot of the so-called protests, which are really resulting in riots and anarchy, are astroturfed. They're not completely organic. Just keep that in mind as well. This is how the game works. And what's also really interesting is that last night I was watching, I don't normally watch Sean Hannity. He bugs me. I think he's kind of a phony. But man, they played that video of George Floyd getting choked over and over and over and over. They must have played that video for about 20 minutes. You had Dan Bongino on there, and they're both martial arts experts, and they're both decrying what's happened, and they should, right? But they sure as hell played it a lot. They played it nonstop. Then you had this woman in Central Park with her dog and the dude, and more Karen stuff. I mean, it just feels like the fires are being stoked, and not just on the left, by the way. Not just on the left. Feels like other outlets and other agents and agencies are stoking this thing as well. It's coming from both sides, because both sides have an investment in this. Out of chaos, a new order emerges. Okay, let's see what else we have here. I agree. I hated the show. It was terrible. It was like so excessive and egregious. And every 5 minutes, you're hearing how Sean Hannity studies martial arts, and they're breaking down the takedown, the choke down. They even brought in Bernard Kerik, and Bernard Kerik is one of these disgraced figures from 9/11. Bernard Kerik was, I think he was the chief of police, if I'm not mistaken, in New York during 9/11. So he knew where all the bodies were buried. He knows what happened in 9/11. After 9/11, his so-called heroism, he was rewarded with a contract overseas. They got him out of the country with some security firm. But then he had some money issues, and he wound up doing a little bit of time. And I think that they wanted to make sure that he knew where his place was. And they brought Bernard Kerik on to talk about this shit. And this is a 9/11 perk, okay? So anything that this guy says or opines on should be discredited from the moment he opens his mouth. But that's what they did for the majority of Hannity last night. Just showed this thing over and over and over and over again. You can show it one time and you can break it down one time, but they turned it into this theater of grotesquerie. That's what they did. Okay, what else do we have here? It's theater for the dumb masses. Nothing happened. Yes, breathe out the side of your neck. First aid checks your pulse. Dead, nothing, walk away. So there is a thought, right? There is a thought that this thing did not occur. Right, that's, and certainly it's something that we need to wrap our heads around on some level. But for all intents and purposes, whether it didn't occur or did occur, it's having an effect, right? It's having an effect. And I do believe that there is a psychological operative motivation around this, completely around this. Even the city, Minneapolis, Prince, Revolution, Operation Purple Rain. And I talked about, how the police have been trained over the last decade. It's a very selective system by how they choose police officers. Apparently this guy was around for 18 years. I talked about the training of the police officers by the IDF, right? So there's a whole set of pieces that go along with the incident itself. And clearly it's having an effect, it's having an impact. And whatever effect and impact they wanted it to have, it is taking shape, right? It is taking shape, and you're going to watch this, and this is going to play out. And just as things calm down, just as they calm down, there'll be another event, and it's probably going to be connected to the event in Georgia, and those guys will get a reduced sentence or maybe even get off, and then the whole thing will explode. So what do we do, right? What do we do? Well, first of all, we talk about it. We talk about it. We untangle it. We look at it. We decipher it. That's really important, which is what I try to do on a daily basis. We also have to figure out what's going on behind the scenes, because now, as we're watching this thing play out, now they're fast tracking these COVID-19 passports. Now we're going to have the contact tracers begin to move in, right? So while we're watching and witnessing this theater of strife, there is going to be a whole other series of activities that we won't be paying attention to. We always do this. Here's one hand doing this, the other hand's doing this over here. So, just as we're starting to lose sight of the draconian measures that will still be a part of what happens with this whole COVID-19 experience, we're looking in another direction. So don't lose sight of this. And quite possibly, they may roll out wave number two. I stumbled across something interesting that I wanted to share with you before I sign off today. And this is very interesting. This is very, very interesting. Sometimes the show and tell comes from the most fascinating places. So this is the president of El Salvador. What's interesting about the president of El Salvador is, well, he's not so-called Latino or Hispanic. His name is Nayib Bukele. And this is your president of El Salvador. And this is what he says, which is quite interesting. He says he's taking hydroxychloroquine. Says most world leaders are doing the same. Bukele told reporters on Tuesday that most world leaders are doing the same, and has questioned why world leaders are being advised to use it while the public is not. I use it as a prophylaxis. President Trump uses it as a prophylaxis. Most of the world leaders use it as a prophylaxis, said Bukele. President Donald Trump has been a proponent of the drug, which is normally used to treat malaria, and recently announced they've been taking it. And he says a lot of good things have come out about the hydroxy. You'd be surprised how many people are taking it, especially the frontline workers, Trump said. I happen to be taking it. I'm taking hydroxychloroquine right now. Trump has since completed his regimen. So it's interesting that this guy, Bukele, is questioning why the leaders of the world are taking it and other people aren't. It's very interesting. He said in his tweet, he says, does it work? I don't know. But we have been advised to take it while the rest of the world is being advised not to. Why? That's a question worth asking. I wonder how long he's going to be the leader of El Salvador. You may have a expiration date on your residency there, Mr. Bukele. But a lot of times they'll do this stuff, right? It's called revelation of the method, and they'll have somebody somewhere basically spill the beans and tell us. And he may actually be playing that role. Did they say, why don't you go ahead and tweet about this? Right? Go ahead and tweet about it. Tell people that we're taking it and they're not. So, but I wanted to share that with you because there's always a rule for one set and a rule for another. And obviously they know something about hydroxychloroquine, which is effective because it treats malaria, which is not a virus, by the way. Malaria is not a virus. Okay. When I get out of here, I've been jamming for a little over an hour. Thank you for finding the channel today. I'm going to see tomorrow. We've got the Friday Farcast. Ben Balderson is going to be on the show. Ben is a distiller. He's really into spagyrics. If you've watched his interviews on Freeman's show, you'll know a little bit about Ben. So he'll be with me tomorrow. And I think I'm going to try to get this fellow Lark in Texas. I have to have a conversation with him today. And he's all over this idea of communitarianism. And if you've seen the latest Amazing Polly video, she talks about communitarianism. This is going to be the new buzzword. Communitarianism is going to be associated with this version of the New Age and Agenda 21 and Agenda 2030. And this fellow Lark in Texas has been all over it. So I'm going to have a conversation with him today, see if we can get him on the show for tomorrow. We know we're going to have Ben Balderson, so check in. It's going to be here on the Friday Farcast, unless, of course, YouTube decides that I can't stream on this channel anymore. We'll find out about that tomorrow. In the meantime, you know, one of the things I talked about yesterday and part of yesterday's show, and again, I will stress this message again and again and again. You've got to take care of yourself. You know, this is the front line. Your physical being is the front line for everything in your life. Your health, right? Your mental health, your physical health, your emotional health, and your spiritual health. All these things need to be cultivated. They all need to be cultivated. And now the true node in Gemini, it can get very interesting, right? Because the true node in Gemini, to me, is about mutability and hackability. So we can find very interesting things, shortcuts, improvisations, things that allow us to amp up or ramp up quickly. So this is a very interesting time to do research and to find, like tomorrow when we get Ben on the show and we talk about spagyrics, you may want to, take notes. And this could be a really interesting and important addition to your life. Right? We are not just here, we're not just here to deal with this idea of this evolving tyranny, or this tyranny which is beginning to unveil itself around freedom of thought and freedom of speech and freedom of assembly, although that is the physical manifestation of it. We are here right now in this domain to be engaged on the front lines of not just freedom on earth or freedom on Terra or freedom in this holographic experience, but for the entire universe. We are in the center of an unfolding cosmic drama. And as one age ends and a new age begins, the narrative for that age is really up for not more than just discussion. The narrative for the coming age is really up for acquisition, right? Territory, ideas, mindsets. So the more that we can anchor sort of this organic analog experience, which links us up, right, to this really cosmic and sacred divine connection, logos that is actually able to express through us. This is our technology. This is our emerging technology. Remember that, right? In as much as they've got this other version of technology, whether it's AI or whether it's the virtual realms or biosynthetic life forms. Speaking of biosynthetic life forms, you should probably watch the Mark Zuckerberg interview today on Fox. Check him out. I'm convinced he's a biosynthetic life form. Right? Just as this stuff is emerging in their world, right? There's another form of this emerging in our life as well. Just keep that in mind. But this is how the universe works. So all that magical shit that they have planned based on AI and 5G and all these new these new non-carbon life forms, like all that stuff is representative of one model. There's another model that has an equal amount of complexity and novelty that's inside of us. Okay, and we're here to nurture that. We're here to anchor that, because that's ultimately, I think, the best path to take. It's the least invasive, in my opinion. That's not to say that there can't be some cool things with technology. There are some cool things. We're using it right now. Right? But there's some things that are very uncool with technology as well. And that's where we have to plug in our discernment. All right. Be back tomorrow, 12 noon, Central Standard Time, Friday Forecast. We know we got Ben Balderson. We might be having Lark from Texas on. I'm going to go check him out, have a conversation with him today. We'll be talking about this idea around communitarianism. In the meantime, use your head to discern what's real and your heart to say what's possible. Thanks for finding me today. Be back here again tomorrow. Take good care. Bye for now.